So, welcome back to Swing of Ages podcast. I'm very fortunate to speak with Chris Greene. And Chris is a wonderful composer, band leader, educator, saxophonist out of Evanston, Illinois. I've had the pleasure of seeing the Chris Greene Quartet a few times when I lived in Chicago. And if you get a chance to see his band, I absolutely highly recommend it. Chris has had, I think, Chris, this is your 11th album. We're talking about Curvescence, which is your 11th album.
Yep, Conversants. Yep.
Convergence, thank you. And I think we last talked, let me look at my notes, but it looks like we talked back in 2017 about boundary issues. So yeah, it's been a while since we talked, and I know I've seen you live since then. How are you doing?
Great. Yeah, really super excited. Just I'm doing good. The family's doing good. Band sounding good. So just super excited to get out and play behind this new music.
Right. And I've listened to Convergence a few times, absolutely love it. The album comes out on October 20th. And my understanding is this is the first, it's on Pravda Records, and this is the first jazz album on Pravda.
Yes, very
How'd
first.
that come about?
Well, it's a Providence kind of a. They're actually not kind of. They're very much an institution both in Chicago and kind of in the world really. The longest running independent label in Chicago. Um, they put out all kinds of music, from soul, throwback soul, indie rock, folk rock, punk stuff. I mean, they kind of run. There's like no specific genre that they're tied to, and it just so happened that somehow I got on their radar. But interestingly enough, I played with a bunch of the artists on their label. Not necessarily. I mean, I've recorded with a couple I've recorded on a couple of the artists' records that they put out on that label, but it's just it was kind of a sort of a fluke where I there was a run where I recorded with a bunch or I performed with a bunch of artists on the label. Like there's a guy by the name of Steve Dawson. I did a couple tracks on his last album.
Mhm.
I've done a couple of side gigs with people in a band called the Handcuffs. I've just done a couple of side projects with them, and just it just kind of worked out where like one day I'm playing a gig with a couple of people who are on the label, and I can't, the guy who owns the label, Ken Goodman, walks up to me and says, "How you doing? My name's Ken," and I was like, "Oh, that fan, hi Ken, nice to meet you." And so I go back to the bar to get a drink, and
Mhm.
Chloe, who's on the label, she says, "Hey, did you meet Ken?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, it seems like a nice guy." It's like I think you. She's like, "I think you better go talk to him because I think he wants to do something with you." I was like, "Wait, what?" You better, yeah, he owns a label I'm on. Go back and talk to him. So I was like, "Hey, Ken, hey, how you doing? Remember me, the guy that kind of sort of ignored you about 2 minutes ago? I apologize." And we just talked. He was like super cool and handed me his card and was just like, "Hey, I would love to work with you." It just kind of worked out that it was a really great situation. And they never put out a jazz record before, which is really a part that I'm really excited about because it's people who are they've built up a fan base primarily of just music lovers, people who like music. So there's no real allegiance to any particular style. So, and I've always been a person who likes to perform for people, whether they've got 5,000 jazz albums or one. It's just let me get in front of the people and try to make you dig what we're doing. So it's a super cool situation. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So this is Chris Greene Quartet's first album since, was it Play Harder? I'm sorry, for Play Space to Play Harder.
Yes. So yes. Yep. I've actually, yep. Not only that, but our first all studio record since the last time we talked, since Boundary Issues, because our last two or two and a half records have been all live records. Just both all three recorded at Space, a club in my hometown. And it just worked out where like we performed these couple gigs which were worthy of release. But once we kind of got back in the situation of like let's do a studio record, and once probably got involved was just like let's go back in the studio and do what we do. So yeah, it's our first studio record since 2017.
That's fascinating because as you mentioned, the first one since 2017, but you have been really busy since then. And you have released some albums during the pandemic. I think the first one was Play Space, which was a live, also recorded at Evanston Space in Illinois. And then, as we just mentioned, Play Space 2, Play Harder. And your quartet has been together for a long time, right?
Yep, some form of fashion since 2005.
Wow. Yeah, amazing. So this album also features your longtime drummer, Steve Corley, Damian Espinoza, who was handling the acoustic and the Fender Rhodes, and then Mark Payne,
Yeah,
who believe contributed songs and co-produced the album, right?
yes, yes. So, yep. Yeah, I mean, he's been my kind of my co-pilot on this. Actually, we recorded half the album actually at his house. Actually, he's got a pretty nice studio set up at his house. So we actually were able to record about half the songs at his house and the other half at Uptown Recording in Chicago. And I'm pretty happy. One of the biggest compliments that we got, I let a good friend of mine, Markwell Jordan, who recorded with us a
Mhm.
few times. I let him hear the tracks, but I didn't tell him which tracks were recorded at Mark's place or at a studio. And so he was just like, honestly, I couldn't tell. I was like, okay, good. If a esteemed musician like you, who's recorded several projects of your own, can't tell which recorded at a super top shelf studio and Mark's basement, you can't tell, then clearly we're doing something right. So I was really happy about that.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. And one of the things I like about your projects, I mean, the Chris Greene Quartet has a number of albums on Bandcamp and they're on CD as well. But my understanding is, well, my not understanding, I ordered this album also on vinyl. So it's
Yes.
coming out on vinyl too. Was this your first vinyl?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm super excited about that. It's something that I've always wanted to do, but it never really had the resources, and it's like one of those things where you put out an album and you're super excited, and some will sell well, and some will eventually you'll eventually get rid of all of them. But I had dreams of having horrible fights with my wife. Is like, okay, you got CDs in my house. Now you got to take up my basement with a bunch of vinyl. Come on, dude. So I was like, no. But actually, so it was something I thought about doing for a very long time. But one of the perks about the deal with Pravda was that I was talking with Ken. One of the things he was like, "Hey, and we'll do a vinyl run too." And I was like, "Oh wow, okay." So it wasn't even like you know anything we had to go back and forth or haggle over. It was his idea. Like, we're going to do a CD run, we're going to do digital, and we're going to do vinyl. I was just like, okay, cool, because there have been a number of times where people would be, vinyl aficionados would say like, man, if you only had some vinyl, I'd love to get this album on vinyl.
Right.
Now I can actually say, this album's on vinyl, so I'm super excited about that.
I mean, I ordered the vinyl and I like vinyl because first of all, I mean, I don't think necessarily it sounds better than a CD. I don't think it does, but
Mhm.
I like to have the physical product. And I
Right,
also feel, especially when you order directly from the artist,
right,
you can do in this case, the money situation for the art, especially jazz artists, is much better than getting a download or just
yeah.
streaming. So that's one thing that I think is extremely important to support the artist that way.
Absolutely. And it's funny, like it's physical. Going back to what you said about physical product, I mean, CDs, it's a different kind of thing where you put it in the thing and pop it on and listen to it. But with vinyl, like it's a commitment. Like, you
It is.
listen to one side and you get up and you flip it over. It's kind of like me and my wife kind of have this ritual of, like, if we're just kind of sitting around the living room, we've got a record player in our living room. We'll listen to vinyl, and we'll just sit and have cocktails or whatever, and this kind of thing. We'll just listen to vinyl, and so it's kind of cool. Like, we can be part of people's home ritual. But whatever ritual they have when it comes to listening to vinyl, we can be part of that now. We can,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's
So
all.
again, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say they can listen to it and do their thing, and then flip it over, and then we can be part of their evening listening to vinyl. So
Yeah, that certainly helps. So I encourage everyone to check out chrisgreenjazz.com to purchase the album from there. It's also available. I think it'll be available via Bandcamp. Is that correct, Chris?
Yep, Bandcamp, all that stuff. Yep,
Yeah,
Bandcamp, all the typical digital outlets, and at the Pravda Records website as well.
absolutely. Fantastic stuff. So let's dig in and talk a little bit about some of the tracks on the album. If I may, I'm going to start with the first single, which is Gentleman's Breakfast. How did that come about? How'd you write it?
That is a well, it's a song. Well, musically, it's kind of my love letter to the many Brazilian artists that I've grown to love. My sister is a big Brazilian music aficionado, so every once in a while she'll pull my coat to some current people, as well as some people that have made some, from the 50s, 60s, and 70s that have made
Right.
some fantastic music. Gal Costa, Elis Regina, Milton Nascimento, of course, the great Antonio's Carlo Jobim, Tim Maya, my all-time favorite, Ed Mata. Um,
Idmata, yes.
so he's my guru. So just so people like so I kind of had that vibe in mind when I wrote the song. It's something that could sort of kind of pass in that ilk. That MPB bossa mixed with a little bossa nova, mixed with some Brazilian soul kind of thing. So I kind of had that vibe in mind. It's inspired by the term gentleman's breakfast is kind of like kind of a ritual that my son and I have whenever he has a day off from school. Usually or I should say, will have what they call half days. His day is done at like 11 or 12 or whatever. And so I'll scoop him up and then we'll go somewhere in town or in Chicago for breakfast, for lunch. We'll have breakfast for lunch. So, yeah. So, and that's kind of what kind of inspired that song.
Mhm. When did you start composing that? Did you have an album in mind when you started?
No, it's funny. I never really have albums in mind. Well, at least when I start writing, I never really think like. No, I'm not necessarily thinking albums. I am, however, thinking like, wow. I'm always thinking about the band and what we can do, and what we haven't done, or what might be cool. Or like I know that Steve, our drummer, can do these styles, but like, or I know he can do just about anything you throw at him. But what if he was to do, what can he do with these limitations, or what could he do with this particular feel? And then
Mhm.
what kind of groove can I give Mark, our bass player, to play on top of that? And then Damien, our piano player, just like there's nothing I can tell him about how to play piano. I can just simply say like these are the parameters of the song. Like make your presence felt in these parameters. So I'm not always thinking about like the album, but I'm always thinking about like how it's going to sound when you play it. And what always happens with any of these songs is like when I bring them in, I'll have an idea of what I want it to sound like, but it's like I'm also from the Duke Ellington school, which is like you write for your sidemen, you write for your bandmates. So it's like I may have an idea and they'll start to play it, and maybe Mark will make a mistake, quote unquote, and I'll be like, hey, what you just did, do that again because that you just enhanced what I was thinking about, or you know Steve will be warming up with something, and it's just like, hey, do that again or something. So it's just kind of like you write the thing, but you also leave room for their interpretation.
Mhm.
As the band leader or musical director, whatever you want to call me, I'm the guy that kind of like shapes it together. Because sometimes my idea isn't the best, and sometimes like they may have a better idea, and I'll like kind of glob onto that idea and like kind of pull that into what we're doing or pull that into the song that I'm writing. So it all kind of comes together like that. Usually comes together like that.
Yeah, this song has a great feel. I mean, the rim work is exceptional. Then the time signature piece, and then that piano. That's just it really moves. It's just a great way. It's a great first single.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, how do you arrange? Do you arrange in studio with the band?
Usually, well, never, probably not in studio. Well, no, I take that back. There's usually when we only tend to rehearse when we have new material.
Okay.
So or something usually we're playing so much, and so that the arrangements themselves will kind of like take shape while we're playing them. So usually when I'll write a song or one of the guys will write a song and then we'll rehearse it, we'll get it as tight as it can be the first time we play it in a rehearsal, and then we start playing it in front of audiences, and it's gonna evolve. Things are gonna happen during the song, and there are gonna be musical landmarks that we're looking for, but what happens between those landmarks are what makes jazz, as far as I'm concerned. So it's like we're trying things on stage and really getting to know the song, and certainly like we're kind of dependent on the sheet music at first because we're just kind of trying to figure our way. But there's always a point when you're playing these songs where the just kind of intuition takes over and muscle memory takes over, and then
Hmm.
we're not reading the song anymore. We're playing the song together, and that we're not just starting and stopping the song together. We're actually making music using the song as a sort of a vehicle to play together. And that's always the time where like everybody's creativity is just really, really popping. And that's where it's like, okay, this one's ready to go. If we do hit a studio, this one's ready to go. Um, and then so when we do get in the studio, um, I mean, especially compared to like the last couple of live albums where we just kind of we could play like a 13, 15, 17-minute song. Here we kind of like, okay, you have to reel it back a little bit and get right to the point. We've got like 6 to 8 minutes to really, to burn and get it, get make our point, make our point felt in those like 6 to 8 minutes. Um, or radio play or whatever, or just people's attention span. It's just like you want to give them as many flavor, especially with a studio album, you want to give them as many flavors as you can. So that's where I'll kind of, as the producer, arranger, whatever. That's where I kind of get judicious, and I'm like, okay, I'll only take two choruses. You take two choruses. You take one chorus. We'll get right to a super, short drum solo, just so everybody kind of has their moment to shine in
Right.
6 to 7 minutes. So that's probably where the arrangement in the studio comes in. Live, we can just kind of like, let it all hang out, and everybody kind of gets their say. But studio, you kind of have to like get to the point really quickly. So
So do you and Mark, in your roles as co-producers, um, take the raw cut and do any digital editing to it?
a little bit. Not more. We try not to edit too much unless like maybe the end of one take, or like say maybe the intro to a song was really strong, but maybe like the start of the song itself was not so good, but maybe the second take was the start of the second take overall was better. So maybe we might make an edit like that. But by and large, our we're kind of old school with new tools. Basically, it's like we use our the Pro Tools or Logic or whatever to record. But as far as like our recording process, it's really we're kind of like the old school, like early Beatles or Frank Sinatra records. Like go in the studio, record two, 3 or 4 passes, or maybe 2 or 3 takes. Pick the best one you like, move on to the next one. And the benefit, the strong benefit for us is that we've got a working. I've got a working band that works quite a bit, so you know that's the benefit. The benefit of having a working band is that we can our studio sessions go by really really quickly because we're playing the material for so long in front of so many audiences.
Wow, yeah, that shows. So let's move to the track Broken Glass. And I think that was written by Damian Espinosa, who has a fantastic Fender Rhodes solo on that. How did that song come about? How did it work out in the studio?
Damien is one thing about I love about Damien. He is a student of piano, and by that I mean he's a studio student from James P. Johnson all the way to uh, Robert Glasper, and he's actually a huge Robert Glasper fan, and there are a lot of his more current projects that I've kind of was not a huge fan of his at first, but I'm really kind of coming along to his concept and definitely his, I mean, his influence on many jazz pianists, especially the younger crop, is kind of undeniable. Like all of them are, especially the younger ones, are definitely very much taking from his vibe and his style. And so Damien is a student of piano, and he's a big Robert Glasper fan. And so he'd actually written a song before a long time ago. I forgot. I think I want to say it was called Charlotte. Really kind of a regular swing tune, um, kind of post bop swing tune. And
Mhm.
he brought it in, and we rehearsed it. And I thought, okay, this is cool. Well, this is something we can grow into. But it was just something that was just bugging. It was like, you know what? I don't like this. I'm going to take this back and retool it. Let's get together. Next time we get together, I'll have it. I was like, okay. I mean, the song you wrote was fine, but all right, no problem. It's your tune. So then he comes back with Broken Glass, which is essentially a revamp of the earlier song Charlotte, but with a whole bunch of that Robert Glasper type of vibe in it. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, you know what? You did the right thing. Like you followed your muse, you revamped your tune. It's a fantastic tune. It's a fun tune to play. It's a tune that grooves, that has some really unusual chord changes,
Mhm.
really surprisingly difficult chord changes to navigate, but it grooves. And so because the chord changes for me, chord changes are so unusual, it forces me, you can't just play your regular, you can't just play your regular licks over it. It's like it's something you have to really think melodically and kind of thread the needle, thread a melodic line through these really, really difficult chord changes. And it's a challenge. It's a surprisingly challenging song to play, but it's fun. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great feel to it. Love the solos, and this is fantastic. So next on my list is Thumper, which Mark wrote.
Mark. So Mark is one of my favorite, obviously my favorite bass player, but also one of my favorite composers. I tease him. He writes songs. He can write these, on one hand, these achingly beautiful melodies,
Mhm.
which we'll get to the other song that he wrote, like these gorgeous melodies that are just really evocative. And then he'll write these other songs where just all hell breaks loose, and which is his, he's a big, like, interestingly enough, he's probably the biggest fan of all the four of us. He's probably the biggest fan of like more avant-garde stuff, but he's
Mhm.
also a huge Frank Zappa fan, and he loves the band Tool. And all those, whenever he writes those kind of like all hell breaks loose songs, like all those influences show up in those songs, and those songs that he writes. And it's fun because it gives us a chance to really tap into a side that we're not known for. People tend to think of us as like, a lot of, and there's some validity to that point of like, jazz with some funkier undertones and everything, which is fine, which is exactly what we are. But we get, with Mark's tunes, oftentimes we get to tap into this like, you know, spiritual free jazz
Mhm.
avant-garde type of side that people don't really know that we can do. And so it's what I like about Thumper is that it's not only is a fun tune to play, it's in my opinion, it's kind of like group improvisation at its best. Because if you listen, it's like I'm taking a solo, but what everybody in the band is doing when I'm soloing is very much important. Because there's no point where there's a drum solo or there's a bass solo. I mean, like there's a little bit of part where like Damien gets to take a little solo and I take a little solo, but pretty much when towards the latter half of the song, like we're all just kind of like having this raucous conversation together. And so it's a really fun tune to play. It's a really, really fun tune to play.
I like that description too at the end about the raucous conversation. I think that really hit on
It's
it.
a
Thank you
it's a
for that.
four-way heated conversation, which is exactly what I think, which is exactly where the Mark designed the song. He didn't necessarily want it to be like you take a solo, you take a solo. It's like this last section is where everything's happening together. We're trying to figure this out all together. So I like that.
Yeah, very good. Then your composition, The Empire Strikes Back.
The Emperor Strikes Back.
Emperor Strikes Back. Excuse me.
So
Yes.
that's a funny one. So my son is 13 now. He is a surprise. He's a really, really talented musician. My, and I, I'm not going to push him, but he's a fantastic drummer and a fantastic. He plays really. He's a much better piano player than I am. And he's got a like any other 12, 13 year old. He's got a gazillion interests on everything, but he's actually really good at playing piano. He's really good at playing piano. And so one day he started playing this really cool melody on the piano. And I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. You wrote that? Oh, I like that. And so every once in a while, like I'd be kind of like working stuff out at the piano, and I'd be like, hey Alex, I'm gonna show you this. I'm gonna show you this melody I wrote, and I would actually play the melody back at him. I was like, I'm gonna take this melody, I'm gonna write a song, and I'm not giving you any credit. Oh, Dad, or like I'm taking your melody. You better do something. You better finish the song. I'm gonna write it, and I'm not gonna give. I'm steal your song. And I just it's my job as a dad to annoy the hell out of them. They're just like, oh, I'm going to take your song and I'm not going to give you any credit. I'm going to get all the money. Ha ha. And then one day I sit down and start to play the melody and then the creative gods come by and all of a sudden I'm hearing chord change. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. The next thing I know, I'm working out a little bridge. I'm like, oh, okay. So then I finished the song and I played it for him and he likes it. And I was like, okay, just so you know, I'm gonna do the right thing. And so I immediately called ASCAP and set up a publishing company for him.
Wow.
So in addition, so not only is he the co-writer of the song, he is he or he is be or not only did he write the song, but he's credited as a co-writing song. So how many 13-year-olds that can say that they are published or accredited ASCAP writers on a major independent release? Not many. So
Yeah.
there
No,
you go.
not many, and it's a wonderful, wonderful song. You're playing soprano on that?
Yes. So, and I think it's musically, it's about as close as to of a maybe a fusiony kind of thing. Maybe
Mm.
I mean you could. It's probably one of the more unusual, uncategorizable songs on the album, just because it's like I had a groove idea in mind and kind of came up with the form and everything else. And then I kind of sit back and listen to it. I'm like, I have no idea what kind of song this is. I mean, I guess the closest thing you could call it is like maybe some like 70s fusion, but I don't know. Maybe it's up to the listener to decide. But that's another fun one to play.
Yeah, it works really well. Thank you. And then Inspiration, which I believe Mark wrote as
Yep.
well.
And so that's the other side of Mark's thing, where like you can write the raucous stuff, and then you can turn around and write these really really beautiful melodies. And that's one of the ones that that's one of his bread and butter areas. He writes these really beautiful melodies, and I believe that song "Inspiration." I believe his wife inspired the song.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's one of those. Yeah, that's the other side of Marpiani, where like you can write this really raucous, funky, avant-garde stuff, and you can turn around and write a really beautiful song like "Inspiration." So that's the other side.
Fantastic. Did I forget anything? I think I got all of them, right?
The do oh the Boogie Woogie Bossa Nova and the last one.
Huh. Well, if you could talk about those, I don't have those on my list.
Okay. Yeah, I think those are that's the vinyl. I think that's the vinyl version. And for the CD version, there are two more that we wrote. Vinyl is like what 20 minutes aside, so yeah, we get a little more space for the CD version.
Oh, fantastic. So those you get to download, you get the little bonus there and CDs as well. So fantastic. Could you talk about those songs a little bit, Chris?
Sure. Okay. So Boogie Woogie Bossa Nova, which is on the CD version, that is a song by Eddie Harris. And that's kind of an interesting story. So late 2019, the Jazz Institute of Chicago reaches out to me and says, "Hey, for year 2020, we're we're so let me backtrack. What they typically do each year, they pick an artist, sometimes a Chicago artist, sometimes just a regular uh, or an influential artist, and they will institute a bunch of concerts throughout the year in tribute for that artist. So this particularly 2020 was going to be the year of Eddie Harris. Eddie Harris is from Chicago. Obviously, we know this magnificently talented,
Mhm.
crazy, gifted, wonderful saxophone player. Super soulful, could be super heavy with his playing. Super, could get super funky. Just had incredible popular success for a while, like we know all about him. I apologize. There we go. So super popular. Had a great run of albums on Atlantic.
Mhm.
So we were one of the bands that was tasked to have a tribute concert to him, and I had never really done a deep dive. I'd known about the hits, the Freedom Jazz Dances, and Compared to What's, and Listen Here's. I'd known about the hits, but I never really taken that time to delve into this catalog. So I was super excited. So I delved into the catalog, streamed all his albums, was, finding all the sheet music, got all these, Eddie Harris songbooks. I was really studying those, ingesting all these interviews that he given, was reading about his life story. Turns out in addition to being this crazily gifted saxophone player, it turns out that he right before he hit he hit it big with the theme from Exodus in the early '60s. He was part of the group that would eventually he was hanging out with the group of musicians that would eventually become the AACM. So he was like this dude that was like also hanging out with these other like supremely heavy dudes. So it was
Mhm.
just a really interesting story. So I arranged all this music. I was really going to try to uh, lean towards his lesser known songs. I was super excited for this concert. Bad news is the concert was scheduled for April of 2020.
Yeah.
So everything shuts down. And so I'm like, oh shoot. So no, so not and actually ended up doing kind of like an online thing where I kind of like
Mhm.
I played all the instruments and played a few of the songs. It was fine. So every flash forward to like 2022, whatever, every once in a while as a band leader, I'm kind of like searching around for inspiration, searching around
Mhm.
for songs to play. Like, everybody's writing songs, and I'm not, I can be kind of inconsistent with my own composition. Something when the inspiration comes, I'm ready, I'm writing it down. Sometimes it doesn't come, so I'm just kind of waiting for it to happen. But I'm kind of like, looking for songs to play. And I'm happen to going through my computer and clearing out a bunch of stuff, and I find this file of Eddie Harris songs that I arranged like a couple years ago. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I needed to do something with these. And I'm just kind of like I'm kind of going through like, what's something I can bring to the gig tonight, and we can just kind of read it down and play. Boogie Woogie Bossa Nova. I'll grab that. And so
Mhm.
I grabbed it. I was like, hey guys, let's play this. Just play it, use it as a time filler. And as one of the benefits of working with the three brilliant guys that I work with is they put their own spin on it and make it super fun to play. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is another one that we're adding this one to the arsenal. This is the one that's we're gonna add this one to the thing. So that's how that one came about.
Great.
The last one is "Just Squeeze Me" by Duke Ellington,
Okay.
which is a song. It's a song that I've always liked. I've always liked that song. It's a really pretty song, both instrumentally and vocally. I love hearing it performed by a vocalist. I love hearing. I've got a bunch of different versions of Duke Ellington playing it with his band, and I also got this kind of like organ trio thing where Johnny Hodges is playing it
Wow.
somewhere with wow, Bill Davis or somebody. So I've always liked the song. I've always wanted to do something with it. And the eternal challenge for playing any classic jazz song in 2024 is how do you take a great song that was written, 70, 80 years ago and make it interesting for us to play, but also, keep the spirit of the song. Uh,
Right.
and so, one of the things I always thought is like, well, what if we took it kind of a slow burn, kind of gospely kind of thing, kind of a country gospel swing kind of thing. And so that's kind of what we were going for with that song. So we basically took the song, kind of kind of tailored to put a new suit on it, and there it is.
Fantastic. Well, looking forward to hearing those two. The album again comes out on October 20th, and it is Chris Greene Quartet's first album on Pravda Records. Chris, anything else you want to add?
Just yeah, I'm just super excited to yeah, just to get back out and play stuff. I'm really, it's really great have a new album out. It's great to be working with a label like Pravda that's been around for 40 years. It's great to be the first jazz artist on that label. It's just, yeah, and I'm just excited to bring the music to the people. It's just like we always, as jazz artists, we kind of bitch and moan about like you know, the eternal conversation, is jazz dying, or is the art, are the artists going away? And it's just like, I don't know. It's just like if you play interesting stuff and you play it with conviction and you play it earnestly, and, you don't kind of act like the unwashed masses aren't allowed to listen to your music because they can't, they don't know what a ninth chord is or something like that. You know, that attitude never works for anybody.
Right.
It's not going to get the people in if you act like you don't know who Hank Mobley is. I can't talk to you. Like no one's ever gonna, oh, you just shoot away somebody that might dig what you're doing. So that's always been my thing. But I don't know. It's always just, I'm just excited to play this music for the people and take it around the country and see where it goes.
Well, it's a wonderful album. I need to mention Conversions is actually out on October 19th, not October 20th. On October 20th, you have a album release party in the Chicago area, right?
Yes, yes. We have one of two release parties. October 20th, it's going to be at the Sanctuary at the Epiphany Center for the Arts, and um, and then we're also having another one on Thursday, November 7th at Fitzgerald's in Berlin.
Fantastic. I wish I were in the area because I do love seeing your band live. You guys are amazing, and this is another amazing album. I encourage everyone to check out chrisgreenejazz.com. Also, look for the Chris Greene Quartet on Bandcamp, a wonderful catalog of recorded music in the studio and live music. And I certainly appreciate you. This is a great album, Chris. I appreciate your time. Let me turn this off.